Welcome to the Messy City Podcast, where we talk about creating the kinds of always changing, wonderfully messy cities and towns that we humans clearly love. We'll talk with those people trying to revive them or create them anew, whether they be designers, developers, builders, planners, or just anyone interested in the conversation. Thanks so much for listening. Welcome back to the Messy City Podcast. This is Kevin Klinkenberg. Really looking forward to today's conversation. I've got a new guest and somebody new to my world on the program, Joe Jimenez. I was able to connect with Joe through Chad Carson, otherwise known as Coach Carson, who was on here a couple months back. And I kind of reached out to Chad. And I was like, I really want to have somebody that could help me do a deep dive on travel hacking, because I think it'd be useful for the listeners. Uh, as it turns out, we have a whole lot more to talk about besides travel hacking, because Joe is also sort of a small real estate investor and does a lot of really cool stuff. And so, Joe, great to talk to you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure. I'm excited for the conversation.
I'm really looking forward to it. So I do like to give people a little background right up front about the person and who it is, who's the human being behind the voice, and tell us where you are and how you kind of came to be connected with Chad originally.
Yeah, so I live in Kalispell, Montana. It's just outside Glacier National Park. I'm originally from Florida, and I met Chad, or Coach Carson, at FinCon 2018. And we just got on really well. Turns out we had a lot in common. He loves to travel. We were both travel hackers, and we just became friends, and we kind of stayed in touch. And at FinCon, I was not previously into real estate investing. I actually got into this whole world because I was really into the FIRE movement, or what's known as the FIRE, Financially Independence, Retire Early. And Chad, I read his blog and really resonated with a lot of his work. And like I said, we stayed friends. And then when we moved from Florida to Kalispell, it was always a dream of mine to live in the Mountain West. We started with a house hack. I truly believe, and I tell everybody to this day, it's the best way and the easiest way to get started with
Oh,
real estate investing.
God, 100,
Right, Kevin?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
It's kind of a way to dip your toes in without, going all in. So I did that with my wife. We bought a duplex. We Kind of a funny story about that is we lived in a motorhome at the time. So we actually lived in the alley of this duplex. So we did another level of house hack, a house hack plus, I don't even know what you would call it. But so we house hacked the first property, and we got to see how this was helping us build wealth and reduce our living expenses. So after the first duplex, we purchased our second property way faster than we anticipated. And we lived in that unit. We bought the first one as a investment property just because we kind of knew we were going to build a small portfolio
Mm-hmm.
to kind of diversify our investing. So we moved into the second property while we fixed up the other unit. And then we lived in that for about a year, and we moved out of that. Now we have that as a short-term rental. It's fully furnished. And so we have those two duplexes. And then we bought a primary, which also has an ADU, or an accessory dwelling unit, which we rent out furnished as a midterm rental. And I think Chad was taking notice of what we were doing, and I don't know, maybe he was impressed. And just as we stay in touch, and he said, hey, if you ever want to do something together, it would be fun to try to invest and form a partnership. And it was an opportunity that I could not pass up. And we found this 8-unit property, which we operate as a short-term rental. So today, what it looks like is our portfolio is now I'm like, wow, I'm actually doing this thing. I never thought I'd actually be sitting here talking to Kevin about small development, but we've remodeled that property. So we have 10 short-term rental units, I'm sorry, two long-term rentals. Our first property we still hold as a long-term rental. And then we have one rental behind our home that we midterm rent. So that's kind of my connection to the real estate world. I still am really interested in personal finance in general. I still travel hack, as Kevin mentioned, as you mentioned, and it's fun. It's we talked about earlier. It's like it's almost like you're playing life. It's almost like on easy mode.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of crazy. Yeah, and
yeah,
I look at you, Joe, and I have to backtrack a little bit because I don't see any gray hair. You don't seem like a very old guy. Can you give a sense of like how old you are? Oh, there's a tiny bit there.
it's yeah, it might be deceiving. I'm 36 years old,
Okay.
so it's fairly young. I know when it's funny when I still do all of my maintenance at our 8 unit boutique hotel, and so a lot of times when people see me in the parking lot doing maintenance, they say, "Oh yeah," I ask them how the suite is, and they're like, "Oh, it's great," and then they kind of do the double take, and they said, are you the owner?" Yeah. So it's like because I guess I look young, and they just don't think that I would own a property of that size, and
Yeah.
that's why I really just it really speaks to the power of partnerships and how much you can do with other people as opposed to doing things on your own.
So let's go back. I want to ask, what was it that, as a young guy, that got you interested in the whole fire movement, the whole idea of financial independence? Where did that come from for you?
It started in 2012 after I graduated college. It was, as you know, after the Great Recession, there was not too many jobs
No.
available, and I graduated with a degree in civil engineering.
Oh,
So, as you would imagine, there was not a lot of people hiring for that. Actually, they were laying a bunch of people off. So, I took it as an opportunity to take a gap year, which was the best thing that I could have ever done for myself. And I hiked the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine.
no
And
kidding.
yeah, I don't know if we talked about that last time, Kevin, but
No.
yeah, that's my background. And
You did the whole trail?
I did the whole trail,
That's awesome.
2,180 miles and some change. So yeah, just northbound from Georgia to Maine. And it took me about 4.5 months. And, you know, I tell everyone if they have the opportunity to do that, something like that, it's not for everyone,
Mhm.
but, just that much time because life we're just moving at such a fast pace, and it's so hard to just slow down. And that gave
Yeah.
me the opportunity to slow down and think about truly my priorities. So I finished the trail. I came back. There was a transitionary period of trying to get back. Just I didn't. I felt like I didn't relate to anybody. It was like I was like I had this experience. Part of me was telling me to go get a job and make
Yeah.
money and get a salary, right, and all that stuff. But then I had this whole other experience that was telling me something else, and I really listened to that. And then fast forward, I found some fire blogs. I found some of my early favorites were, of course, Mr. Money Mustache,
Mhm.
Go Curry Cracker,
Mhm.
and then Chad's blog as well. So I found these people live in this world, and Chris Gillibo was another
Mhm.
blog that I really, really
Mhm.
enjoyed his work. It used to be called the Art of Nonconformity, and he has a book of that same name. I would highly recommend people read it. And it just started it showed me that just a different way of living,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the origin story of it.
Interesting.
So from there, I mean, I didn't think I would get into real estate, or I mean, for me, it was more so how do I live a life to create more autonomy in my life. And I learned about just being very frugal. So, for example, some of the things that my wife and I did is we drive used cars. For a while, I was living about 11 miles from my job, so I would bike to work every single day, one way, 11
Nice.
miles. So we did all of the things, just managing our big expenses to try to, you know, with personal finance, there's two ways to become financially independent. It's like lower your expenses or raise your income, right? Just build that gap. Paula Pant talks about growing that gap.
Mhm.
And at the beginning of it, I really focused on the frugality aspect, right? Like if I could just keep my expenses low, I don't even need to make that much money, so I can have a bunch of free time. And that's kind of where my focus was for a long time. And I started with investing in index funds,
Mhm.
Vanguard mutual funds, total stock market stuff. And then, kind of as I started to develop, I just grew a kind of a interest in real estate and learning how to. So, like I said, house hacking. Going back to that,
Yeah.
I realized that would be the biggest lever that we could pull to reduce our living expenses. I actually eliminated our we eliminated our living expenses, and then that just, I mean, it just enabled us to propel so far forward.
Yeah.
And here I am today
That's
talking to
great.
you.
Let's I wanna unpack a couple of things there, but it is funny. I wanna share a little story. There's, there's a funny similarity here. So back in 2010, in the height of the Great Recession, I, picked up and moved, from Kansas City to Savannah, Georgia, just kind of on a whim because it was also just a really, really tough period for, the architecture profession, which is what I was doing, and there's a whole long backstory I won't bore you with, but um, I actually decided at that time I was going to drive to Maine, and I'm not as badass as you are, and I wasn't going to hike the entire Appalachian Trail, but I was going to like drive along the trail and then camp, at various locations along the way. So
Super cool.
I started out doing that, and but when I stopped over at Acadia National Park in Maine and I camped out one night, I actually broke a toe hiking. And
In the
so,
parking lot.
yeah, yeah, no, that would be really bad if it was in a parking lot. But it was like, yeah, it was coming down a Cadillac Mountain, and so, like, the next day, I went to an urgent care place, and the thing got booted, and so I ended up having a boot for, like, a month, because whenever you break a toe, and so I didn't get to do near as much hiking as I wanted to, but I did end up kinda, like, following the path all the way back down to Georgia and then camping at a few places along the way. There's, like, a funny
That
allure
is
to that
really
whole
cool.
experience, but
Yes, small world, right? And
yeah.
and I find I was talking to my wife earlier this morning, and we were just talking about like a lot of this stuff kind of, there's a lot of parallels, right? Like
Mhm.
I came into real estate investing from the financial independence, retire early kind of mentality, but I came across the fire kind of space after hiking the Appalachian Trail,
Yeah.
because a lot of what the fire community talks about is intentionality,
Mhm.
minimalism. I think fire gets a bad reputation, and people just assume that we're all just making our soap from scratch, and and I don't know, reusing our toilet paper. I
Yeah.
don't even know, but I think it's more about um, being very intentional about
Mhm.
what you care about and spending, just not worrying about that spending, kind of being just very, very careful about what you do spend on, and kind of it's a more lifestyle design and less just extreme frugality to the
Yeah.
point where you're miserable. And I think I'd like to try to talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people, you tell them that you're interested in financial independence, and they just assume that you're miserable and you never go out to eat ever,
Right.
and you just don't have fun. And we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's just the stuff that we care about, we really, um, yeah, we just are very intentional with our spending.
Yeah, and I kinda got into that world similarly to you, finding some of those bloggers that you mentioned, and then, eventually just kinda fully went down that rabbit hole, and I guess,
Hmm.
the way, like, my wife and I always looked at it was, it was about creating that sense of, freedom in our own personal lives so that you're not completely beholden to a job, a house, some large financial commitment that, oh my God, if something goes wrong, we're really in trouble. And
A hundred
yeah,
percent.
yeah. So it's like creating that space in your own life to feel like you have choices and less pressure on yourself. And really, just by making a, a small number of choices really well, you you don't have to do like the full, complete frugality to do it. Um, and
Totally.
so I mean, I want to talk about the house hacking more because I'm a big fan of it. We've done it 3 times. And I always looked at it like, if you can figure out the house thing and the car thing and do that as inexpensively as possible, it opens everything else up for you, because those are probably for most people, the 2 most expensive areas of their life. I wanna ask you, so when you did that first house hack, the duplex, talk about how you financed it, and then what was that like for your expenses, and living conditions while you were there and going through that process?
Sure. No, I agree 100%. In the fire community, we talk about like just your big three expenses, and that's your housing, your transportation, and food.
Mhm.
So if you could just, handle those three or even two of those three really well, then the rest, again, it's not even that big of a deal. But so ours is a little different on that first house hack, like I told you, because we lived in the alley in our 21-foot motorhome for 7 months. But like I said, we personally knew that we were probably going to purchase at least one, maybe two more properties. So knowing that, we purchased that as an investment loan.
Okay.
And so we did put down 25%, which was required
Mhm.
from our mortgage broker. So that's what we did. And we never moved into that property.
Okay,
So
interesting.
yeah, so it was a 3 bedroom, 1 bath on one side, and it had an add-on. So it wasn't your standard duplex that both units were the same. And then the additional unit was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And
Oh, cool.
originally, my wife, yeah, so I thought this was great. Of course, we were going to move into the 1 bedroom, 1 bath, right? And cash flow from the 3-1,
Right.
and then we would have completely eliminated our living expense. But prior to that, my wife and I had lived since, like told you, we were from Florida. We lived in a RV resort, so that was also a 55 plus community. So
Uh-huh.
our lot our lot rent started at $300 a month. So if I had known about house hacking, I probably would have done, we would have done that early on in our marriage. But like at the time, my best version of house hacking was buy an RV and live for $300 a month,
Wow.
which I think is also hard to beat. But
Yeah.
now they're up to about $500, so which is still a very great price for rent.
Right.
But we sold. We lived in a fifth wheel. We sold that, moved into a smaller motorhome, which we bought cash. It wasn't that expensive, and we drove from Florida to Montana, and we were going to, like I said, once the leases were up, live in, move into the 1 bedroom. But I think we just realized, like we that was our first taste of cash flow,
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
So having both, the property was already rented. We bought it with some renters in it. We had our friend who's an electrician hook up a 30 amp hookup to the alley behind the garage, and we just parked the motorhome there,
Mhm.
live there, and I believe so. To answer your question, our PITI was somewhere around, it was like 1,700 for the duplex,
Okay.
and the rents were, the 3-1 started at 1,500, and the for the 3-1, and then the 1-1 was, I believe it was 850.
Okay.
So do the math there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we were making enough to pay for our mortgage, our taxes, and insurance. So, and we weren't spending any of the cash flow. We were just letting that accumulate, just to make, like you said, just
Mhm.
to make sure we didn't have anything big maintenance expense, and then we would have to scramble and try to find the cash.
Right.
So,
And at the
you
time,
know,
were you working, like a normal W-2 job?
so I actually quit my job to make the dream happen. So, I don't know if I would recommend doing that, but I was actually talking to another friend of mine, and because he is in this position where he's built up a little portfolio, and it's basically kind of starting to get to the point where it's almost taking over his W-2 income,
Mhm.
but he has a pretty good salary, so it's hard for him to leave
Mm.
his job. And I
Yeah.
told him, and it's like, I totally understand. I don't have that problem because I never made a high salary. So it was easier for me to kind of rip the band-aid off, right?
Right.
Like, so it's kind of like burning the ships. We had to make it happen. So that said, my wife did own and she still does to this day, she owns a wedding planning business, and she did that in Orlando, Florida. And then so we moved out to Montana because there's actually a big wedding, a destination wedding kind of environment out here. So
Yeah.
she was working, I was helping her with her job, and the whole time I was trying. I mean, I was applying for jobs. I don't. Maybe I wasn't trying too hard to get a job. So, but again, since our housing expense literally was eliminated, I mean, we were living on just such a low such a our expenses were so low that it was pretty easy not to have a job.
Mhm.
I mean, and of course, I will back up and say it's just my wife and I. We don't have kids at the moment, so it's a lot easier as well
Mhm.
to do some of the things that we did, like live in the alley in a 21-foot motorhome.
Right. Right.
But
So then, like, the next one that you bought, was that also, like, financed more like a commercial property, or?
that one was financed more like a traditional owner
Okay.
occupant, the standard, that one we still put down 20% down.
Mhm.
And I think that was one of the things that we did to, I also generally, this is kind of showing my fire kind of mentality. I'm not big on debt.
Mhm.
So because we did live so frugally, when I did have my W-2, biking to work every day, still driving our used car, 2006 Toyota Corolla, not going out to eat very often. So we did have some cash saved up. So we were able to put down the 20%, but, um, and like I said, we moved into one unit. So then we just left the first property, kept it cash flowing. And then we were able to lock in this was during COVID years when
Mhm.
rates were 3%. So I bought that. Now I didn't realize in some ways I didn't realize what I was doing, but now it's really clear. Like we bought that for the debt. So we locked in a 30-year fix, 3.5% Fannie
Mhm.
Freddie back mortgage. I mean, it's
Yeah.
tough to beat, right?
Right.
So it's pretty awesome to say that now. And so that one are very similar numbers. We bought that for a higher purchase price, but we did some remodeling ourselves. We did all the work ourselves. And that's kind of what I was doing. So I was doing remodeling since I didn't have a full-time job. I had more time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we lived in the we left the worst unit. One was really bad condition. It was during COVID when houses were selling in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
This one was listed for 7 months. So I knew just nobody wanted to tackle it. And we were just like, winter was coming and we're here in Kalispell, Montana. So it's like,
Yeah.
we can't live in this motorhome. So we almost bought it out of, I don't want to say desperation, but in some ways we were like, we need a house. So we bought the first property in March of 2021, and then we bought the second property in January of 2022. So our mortgage again was about 1,700, and then for a while there we just got one. We just spent a couple of months and did everything we could to get that up and going as fast as we could. And then we actually moved back into the motorhome. We lived it through the summer or through the winter, I'm sorry, and then got our motorhome out of storage and then parked it in the driveway. It's a theme, I guess. I don't
I
know. We're
guess
just
so.
living on our properties as our, and then we rented the one unit that we fixed up as a short-term rental, which obviously cash flows a lot better than a long-term rental.
Yeah.
So the rent from the one side more than paid for the mortgage of the second property. So
So then nowadays, and now you've got your little boutique hotel that you're doing as well. Is this like your full time gig? Is managing these properties and all? Yeah.
correct, exactly. And I think for a while there, because prior to moving out here, I quit my job to hike the Pacific Crest Trail
Oh,
in
cool.
2019 because I knew we were going to move to Montana, and I'm like, it's got I don't know, again, it's like a constant theme. I quit my job. I had so much fun on the AT and learned so much that I was like, I'd like to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So
Yeah.
I quit my job to do that. But then when I came back, I didn't have a job. So my wife and I together, we converted the old motorhome that we bought and fully remodeled that. So I just go from like remodel job to remodel job.
Uh huh.
So, it's kind of scaling in size as well. So we started with a motorhome, then a duplex, about 1,100 square feet units, and then from there, we went to the 8 unit, which we did hire a GC for that because there's no way I could have
Yeah.
finished that ourselves. But we did do a lot. God bless my wife. We were just putting together furniture and hanging paintings and
Yeah.
doing all. We did the design and everything like that. And I realized during that just how much I actually love the interior, just design and kind of curating a space. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Like so.
Yeah.
So now today, that's my full time job. So we've kind of found ourselves in roles. My wife helps me with that as well. I'm more of the kind of revenue management and maintenance, and it's mostly what I do these days.
Hmm.
Kind of watching over things, kind of high level, and then my wife does the guest communications, and she does the website. She's better at marketing than I am, so it's
Hmm.
it's it's nice. We kind of fell into roles that we kind of prefer to do and that we're more just skilled at, and it works.
So with where you are now, do you find yourself feeling pretty content with what you have, or are you thinking about like next projects or properties potentially?
I just toured a property on Friday. Well, to answer honestly, we are in a position I feel very grateful for, that we do have complete autonomy over our schedule. We utilize a lot of tech and a lot of automation and systems to manage the short term rentals. So it doesn't take up a lot of our time.
Hmm.
Um, we are in a kind of a transitionary period in our life where we are thinking about things like starting a family and
Hmm. Hmm.
things like that. So I think it is important though, and this is maybe kind of what I learned with Appalachian Trail, kind of what we talked about at the beginning, was like I think, and Chad also talks about this as well. We go through like little spurts, little kind of sprints, and it's good to maybe take a little step back, kind of reflect, kind of see where you're at, and that's kind of like where we are at right now. Um, you probably feel this, Kevin. It's like once you're a real estate or a small developer, you're always a investor. So it's
Yeah.
hard. It's like always be looking.
Yeah.
So I am looking at other opportunities, but I don't want to overcomplicate our life. I really buy into the mentality that Chad talks about, the small and mighty investor. It's kind of like, why are we doing this in the first place? It's so we can do what matters. So I am taking on, anyways, just as an example, I just submitted my application here locally to join the search and rescue team
Oh,
for
cool.
the North Valley. So it's like
Wow.
I'm doing more personal things in my life that I'm passionate about, and just trying to be more involved in my community. And I'm listening to more shows like yours to see how I can get involved. And more, maybe I'm joining like the tourism board here, local downtown, stuff like that. I'm finding myself wanting to do that. I never knew I would. I just considered myself a small fry. So now I feel like, okay, like I do care about Kalispell. I do care about my community, and just not just being a little bit more focused with how I spend my time. It just allows me to be able to volunteer my time and do stuff that maybe doesn't make me an income, but I'm able to do, and using my portfolio to allow me to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's a beautiful thing when you think about it, when you can create that financial space in your life to where you don't feel that heavy pressure all the time. It actually opens up so much more opportunity for you to do all these other things that you really connect to, and to give back to the place you live in, to volunteer, and whatever anybody's interests are, even if it's just recreation, who knows what. But there's you it's so much easier to have that time and space when you figure it out like you've done.
Totally. And I consider myself fortunate. Like I'm glad that I did hike the Appalachian Trail, and then I did find these amazing fire bloggers, people that are way smarter than me, people that could kind of emulate what they're doing and kind of follow their footsteps. People like Chad and my friend Jillian Johnsrud, who also lives here. She has
Oh,
a pretty great blog about mini retirements.
oh, cool.
And yeah, so I kind of got lucky, and I tell people like it's especially easier for a lot of the younger people to do because, like I said, you haven't had enough time to allow lifestyle inflation to,
Yeah.
take over.
No doubt.
It was a lot easier for me to go and my wife to go from having college roommates to living in a 200 square foot RV, trailer than like doing that, because it's harder to go back from that,
Hmm.
so it's
Yeah.
possible. And I even think that it's possible. People say like, oh, well, easy for you to do house hacking. And now, I'm married. I can't do that, or I have kids, and there's still ways to do that. It is a little harder. So I don't want to
Hmm.
just discount that. But like I said, it is easier to do it when you're younger and when you have less responsibility. Like now, as our life, I mean, because life, the way I look at it, I mean, it only tends to get more complicated, right?
Yeah.
As you get further in your career, as you start building a family, as you have your house, and your expenses kind of grow. It just seems to have that effect,
Yeah.
unless you're very, very hyper intentional about it. So, like I said, for me, it worked out nicely. Just finding that. I'm just glad I found it at an early age.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's funny because I did my first one when I was 24. I bought an old house that had been cut up into three apartments. And so lived in one and rented out the other two. And this was a long time ago, so we didn't really think about it as like house hacking or anything like that. It was just I looked at it like, wow, this is kind of a cool deal. I was still pretty young, coming out of living in apartments, so living in an apartment like that was not a big deal. I had a lot of friends who were already buying single family homes, and upgrading their lifestyles. And I was definitely like envious of that to a degree. But then what happened was I would come home and like the rent from those two other apartments basically paid the mortgage. And so I was like, well, I don't know, this is actually pretty cool. And so I was able to save more money. I think we just don't think enough about the cumulative effect of that over many, many years. Like if you start out on
mhm.
that path, if you start on a better path and kind of keep going that way, it just, like you said, it makes things so much easier down the line. And
Exactly.
so, I mean, I congratulate you on figuring that out at a young age because most people don't. So,
I know, and it's that proof of concept, right?
yeah,
So I think for a lot of people, I try to encourage them, younger people in college, to start investing. Just open up an IRA, open up a
yeah,
Roth IRA, and just put something in there, anything, just automate it, from your
right,
W-2 job. But it is really hard to um, kind of see, when you don't have a high balance in there, it's
right,
not growing as much. So it's not until you start getting some real, maybe you get 10,000 in there, maybe you get 20, 30, 40, and then once you find yourself with 100,000 in there or something, then earning 8% on that, it's a little more noticeable than on you know 1,500.
yeah,
So it's like, but I think it's important to develop that muscle. And then, like I said, that's why I'm just so passionate about house hacking, right?
yeah,
Because it's like, I think that's the biggest bang for your buck, right?
hmm,
Because you got to live somewhere,
yeah,
and you're already paying $2,000 a month on your rent.
yeah,
So if you could somehow eliminate that, there's not a lot of things you can do, I think, that's going to give you that same impact on your personal finances.
yeah,
So like, you can say, but I started to, so I kind of got converted to from the index investor,
yeah.
kind of the boring, slow, and I was like looking, and I was like, man, this is gonna take forever. I want some wins right now. I want to be able to like benefit from this, and while I'm young and I still have energy, have the ability to go hiking and skiing. So then I learned about real estate investing, and now I'm just all in on it almost.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
So Joe, another leg of the fire thing is travel hacking, which I want to talk to you about because I can imagine that like if you're a big hiker like this, that like the Camino in Spain must be on your bucket list to do, and it's actually been on my list, and so hopefully one day I'll get there. And there's a lot of us who really enjoy foreign travel, and even just domestic travel with flying and staying in hotels or whatever else. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what your experience has been like. Like, how did you first learn about travel hacking as a thing, or as a system, as opposed to like just maybe a buddy got a cheap flight going somewhere?
Yeah, sure. I referenced Chris Gillibo, his blog. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Kevin,
I've heard the
but
name, but I yeah, I haven't read it in a long time.
yeah, well, he has a couple of books as well, and he's known for traveling to every country in the world,
Hmm.
and he would document that, and I just I fell in love with it. You know, I was just obsessed with just reading all of his trip reports, and he was a big travel hacker, so that's how I first learned about it. But it was one of those things that when you don't do it, it's you definitely you put that into the category of too good to be true, right? Like,
Yeah.
so what are you saying? I can sign up for credit cards, get a bunch of points, and then travel business class for free? You know, it's like there's no way. But I learned about it from him, and then I did more reading. Kind of got obsessed with it, if I'm being honest, a little
Hmm.
bit,
Yeah.
and then just
Likewise.
just learned. Yeah, I just learned about, but a lot of like there's a lot of parallels. There's also a lot of fire bloggers that are also travel hackers as well. I believe, oh, I'm sorry. At this point, I can't remember the blog, but I think there was a blog that featured somebody else. They had a Friday series where they would feature somebody,
Hmm.
and this person was a travel hacker. I believe it was 1 mile at a time.
Okay.
He has a very famous blog and
Hmm.
really talks about all these kind of techniques and stuff. So they featured him on the blog, and I mean, I just I was hooked. Like once I learned about it, and I saw it wasn't just one person doing it. It wasn't just Chris Gillibo. It was all, and then there's a whole world. It's like one of those things you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then once I discovered it, I was like, I started digging deeper, and then I started realizing the biggest thing that I had to learn was like, because I did have a credit card or a couple, I think at the time, I didn't really know how credit scores worked. So I had to learn about that first because I didn't want to do anything
Yeah.
too dangerous, mess up my credit, and that was my biggest concern at the beginning. But once I learned about how it worked and how actually travel hacking can help your credit or actually does
Hmm.
improve your credit score, I was like, oh man, this is, and I just went on it all in. My wife Katie calls it the stack. You know, I have like a stack of credit cards like that thick.
Yeah.
So because
Yeah.
there's so many great offers out there.
Yeah. Constantly. So why don't you take a second and explain how it helps your credit score? Because I think that's a common hang up a lot of people have from signing up for a bunch of credit cards. And obviously, like you're a real estate guy, so maintaining a good credit score is like really important.
Totally. So a lot of times people assume that, well, it is true that when you sign up for a credit card, you get an initial, they do a credit pull, right?
Mhm.
The credit bureaus will, so you get an initial decrease in your credit score a lot of times by a couple of points. But credit score is made up of not just that, it's made up primarily of something called credit utilization rate. It's made up of credit age, average age. It's made up of like what I talked about, like whether new credit,
Mhm.
that's like only 10% or something like that. And then the other one is credit history, right? Do you pay your bills on time? Have you made late payments? So credit history is by far credit history and credit utilization rate are the two biggest factors. So when you sign up for a new credit card, your score goes down a little bit, but you get like since you have a new account, you have a bunch more credit, and so that actually drops your credit utilization rate. So that actually is where it helps. Also, if you pay your bill on time every month, don't make any late payments, that's also going to help you out
Mhm.
a lot. And
Mhm.
if you keep these accounts open through time, your overall average score and having credit is good, showing that you pay on time, and then your average age can also if you only have one card, for example, let me back up one sec. If you have one card and you're like, I'm very diligent, I just use this one card, that's great. You never miss a payment, you never make a late payment. But at any given time, if one of the bureaus checks your score, let's say your credit limit is $4,000 and you put all of your expenses on that, if you run it up to $2,000, and that's 50% utilized,
Mhm.
right? So that's going to be, it's not very good for your credit score, so that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you more than signing up for a new credit card would.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I was trying to say a lot and try to
No, no, that
summarize
makes
it.
sense.
Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. That's kind of high level.
Yeah.
um but I don't know how into the weeds you want to get
Well, we can get into the weeds a little bit
with it.
because, like, the heart and soul of this really is about signing up for credit cards, many, probably multiple credit cards per year that offer rewards, that offer travel
Mhm.
rewards for signing up. And I think there's a lot of us, even me initially, I was like, whoa, that sounds like that's kind of weird. First of all, like, is that a good idea? Is it legal? Am I cheating something?
Mhm.
And of course, all of it's just fine, and you can handle whatever you want. I do always tell people straight off the bat that if you're the kind of person that carries a balance on your credit card, that don't do this. This is not for you.
Correct.
You really have to be diligent about paying off your credit card in full every month, because otherwise you will lose the benefits of getting the points. But it is about sort of churning a lot of credit cards, which seems like sort of a weird thing. Maybe the question of like to think about here is like how to get started. Where if you are talking to somebody who's totally new at all this, where do you tell them to go to get started? Or is there a specific card or anything that you look at?
Yeah, so with credit cards, there's different flavors. There's your typical airline credit card, like a American Airlines, a City American Airlines card, and then there's cards that are more associated with banks that earn flexible points.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people know about like the American Express Gold card, or Chase has a bunch of cards. So, and then those points are pretty cool because they transfer to different programs. Like you can transfer to airlines, you can transfer to hotels, and then you can also use those points in the form of like cash back. So I generally tell people that the flexible points are a great place to start. And then it gets a little there's nuances to it as well. For example, Chase has, and the banks are constantly changing it. It's hard to
Yeah,
keep up with it, to be honest.
yeah,
Chase has rules where they call it 524, and it's they will not approve you for a new credit card if you've signed up for more than five cards in a 24-month period. So a lot of times I try to tell people I'm a Chase guy. That's
mhm,
that's kind of I'm really passionate about their cards because they're very very flexible, and they have very good transfer partners
yeah,
like United Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Hyatt Hotels, Southwest. So for me, a lot of people, they let's say, oh, I do that. I have a, I'm sorry, let me back up one more second. There's also another type of card, which is just like your standard cash back card.
yeah,
And I think if you don't want to mess with things, if you kind of don't want to get too much into this, I think for most people, that are not, they don't care about this, and they don't want to travel in first class for free.
right.
I don't know why you wouldn't, but not. But a lot of times I tell people that's probably your best bet if you have zero interest in this and this is annoying to you and you don't want to have but I am also a bit of a minimalist when it comes to even my strategy. I don't want to overcomplicate it. So for some people, I typically recommend starting with your end in mind. Like, okay, I want to take a trip to Paris, you know, next summer with my wife or husband. So I say, okay, now that I know where you want, what you want, it would just, I would advise, okay, maybe you get this card because you live in an American Airlines hub, right? So it's like they have availability constantly from Charlotte to Paris.
Mhm.
So I might actually offer, I might suggest, maybe it makes sense for you to sign up for an American Airlines card. But most people, they don't know exactly how they want to use the points. They're kind of generally wanting to get into this. They want to just start to earn some points. So I say that's where a flexible point currency like the Chase Ultimate Rewards is a great program to start with, because like I said, if you don't know exactly where you're going to go, you don't, because a lot of times people end up with these high points balances with these miles where they barely can even use them. Like, for example, for me, it wouldn't make sense for me to have a Southwest Airlines credit card because I live in Kalispell, Montana, and we don't Southwest doesn't service this airport, right?
Yeah,
So that's where I say typically it's best to start off with Chase, and I also like Chase because they another thing about American Airlines is they have this rule where you can only get the sign up bonus one time per card per lifetime.
yeah,
So you want to make sure you're getting those cards at the highest level the best sign up bonus. So you don't want to sign up for them and not maximize the value benefit. So was that kind of, is that,
Yeah, no, that's
so yeah, it's a lot. I don't
it's
know. I don't want
it's
to like
perfect.
confuse people too much.
We started out, I think, with the chase cards originally too. And that was something I just, I didn't really understand or know much about until till we started reading about it. But like how valuable that ultimate rewards program is and flexible, those are great. And the banks have made this gradually harder over time. It kind of ebbs and flows with the economy. I think when the economy slows down, they start to offer higher rewards and more frequent rewards. When the economy is really
Definitely,
strong, they back off and make it harder. Um,
definitely.
and the airlines and the hotels are always changing their redemption. So it is tricky to stay on top of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, those
And I,
flexible points are great.
Yeah, and I would add that too. Sometimes, to your point, overnight, and airlines are notorious for doing this. They'll just like, it used to, for example, cost 25,000 points for a domestic flight within the U.S., and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, overnight now it's 40,000 or
Yeah,
something like that. So if you're holding these points currencies for too long, a lot of times they can get devalued, as we call it, and so it's like that's why kind of having those flexible point currencies it's a bit of a insurance, because all of those transfer partners would have to drastically devalue their programs for it to like really hurt you.
yeah.
So it's like sometimes I was like, oh, I was going to redeem these points, transfer them to Singapore Airlines to fly to Hong Kong. Now they just changed their award chart, so now it's going to cost way more miles. So instead of using those points for that use, I'll just use these for a really good redemption with Hyatt hotels to just stay at a convenient location close to the airport. So that's kind of again why I recommend the flexible. There's just so much value to it,
Yeah.
and then also within that same framework of the ultimate rewards, there's different cards that have different benefits. So they have business cards if you own
Mhm.
a small business. They have ones with zero annual fees that earn just I'm thinking of one, the Chase Freedom Unlimited earns
Yeah.
1.5% on everything. And then if you have like a business card and one of their premium cards that does have an annual fee, you can they work really well in tandem, in pairs. So you earn points like, for example, we have a premium card, a Chase card that earns ultimate rewards. It earns 3 times points in dining. So if we use that card we use that card for all of our dining and travel purchases because
Mhm.
we earn 3 times points. And then anything that is not a dining purchase, we'll use our no annual fee Chase Freedom card that earns 1.5%. And then there's still the same kind of point. You still use them. There's some nuances, but
Yeah.
just to kind of keep it simple, if you have two of those cards, you could kind of use them together to kind of just really optimize your strategy. So I like to tell people there's two aspects to the travel hacking. The first thing is earning those points because you have to learn how to do it. Part of that is like what we talked about, the big sign up bonuses and also the bonus spending categories.
Yeah.
And the second aspect to travel hacking is knowing how to redeem these points in an efficient way, so you're not blowing so many points on so many times. Like sometimes my friends tell me, they're like, "Oh, you would be so proud of me." Like I redeemed my points. I'm flying from Orlando to New York, and it only cost me 100,000 points, but it's great. I got my flight for free, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" You could have transferred them to this other airline and only spent 20,000 points.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the part where it starts to get more a little involved, or you kind of just have to learn uh, based on where you're traveling from or your goals. You can kind of learn. There's so many blogs out there with information. I typically will just search like, what's the best way to redeem points to travel to Singapore or something like that. And then there's because it, like you said, Kevin, it changes so much
Mhm.
that like before it used to be maybe American Airlines might have been the best points currency to travel there, but maybe now today it's you know um, United Airlines
Right.
points. So it kind of just changes. So first, learn how to earn the points. Second, learn how to redeem the points.
Yeah, and you hit on one topic there that I think is really important for anybody who does own a business, even frankly, if it's like a side hustle that you can claim as a business, that opens up the world of business credit cards to get in addition to personal cards. And I mean, I will tell you, I this is one area where probably one of the best things I've done is like I include my oldest sister into this world. She had her own alterations and sewing business for almost 40 years. And um, so maybe, God, I don't even know how long, 7 or 8 years ago, I kind of got her into travel hacking, and she just dove in like crazy, learned everything about it, got every card, and she had never really had a chance to travel much before doing that. And now her and her husband I mean, they're in Australia right now for a month. Uh,
That's amazing.
and they flew there on business class, and they're doing a round the world trip next year for 3 months. And it's completely changed their lives in such a really fun way. So I joke with her. I'm like the student has become the master. You know
Yeah,
that.
exactly. You're a good brother, Kevin. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I think about my friend Alan that we lived in the 55 plus community. He was our neighbor, and he, like in his past, he couldn't afford to travel, right? And I
Mhm.
told him about this travel hacking, and just like your sister, he just took on to it and just started reading all the blogs,
Yeah.
and then next thing you know, like last year, I think I forget where because he's traveling so much now. Like he flew in business class to Greece, and I just love seeing his photos from that. It just makes me feel so good that, I mean, you open up a whole new world that, I mean, really, like, we would never be able to do this and
Yeah.
pay for this. It's so expensive, but it's definitely accessible if you're willing to learn a little bit. And I will say for sure, I mean, it doesn't, if you're good with your credit and you don't like carry a balance and pay interest, gosh, like
Mhm.
who want, we never pay
Never.
interest,
No.
right? So that's the biggest number one important. I mean, that's I guess I gloss over that because for me, that's such a given, right?
Yeah.
And you, it's like that's a very basic personal finance. You don't want to be paying 24% credit,
Yeah.
card interest rates. Like, never do that.
Right.
If you have that under control and you are living within your means, I mean, gosh, there's so much. My wife and I travel business class at least once. It's funny. We joke. We say we're ruined now because unless like if we're flying to Europe or flying to like we have to fly business class now, and it feels so bad, like weird to
Yeah.
say. I mean, the same person that I lived in the woods for 4.5 months sleeping out of a tent. So it's like, but when we travel, like we're just ruined now. So
Well, wait till you have kids because then it'll change. It gets harder.
a lot more points, a lot more cards I got to sign up for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just different. So, like, I
Yeah,
mean, I think it's fun for a second to talk about some of the benefits and some of the trips, that we've done. Because I don't think we have paid for a flight in 11 or 12 years. Um,
incredible.
and first, it was just the two of us, and then later on with kids, with just the two of us, we went to China, we went to France. With the kids, we've gone to Europe twice, including our most recent trip to Ireland, where we didn't pay for any of the flights. Um, we hardly ever pay for a hotel. Uh, we do a ton of domestic traveling for family. So like we've already got trips booked over Thanksgiving and spring break next year to Florida to see family down there, all covered by travel points. The one hang up is now that there's four of us, we tend to get like Airbnbs or VRBOs when we travel, and it's really hard to hack those. It's just a little more work, and which is fine. I mean, we always feel
Exactly.
like, well, shoot, if we got our flights for free, that's okay. But
Exactly.
like, what were some of what are some of the trips that you have done that you think about?
I don't want to make your listeners jealous, Kevin. No.
Go for it. It's all right. It's all good.
No. So one that it just, I mean, I go to every single time was when I turned 30. My dream was to go to New Zealand. So
Mm.
my wife and I booked Suites class. Have you heard of it on
No.
Singapore? So it's international first class, but they call it Suites class, and it's on a Airbus A380, the biggest passenger airplane. It's a double decker, the whole plane, and so they have. Let me see one. there's only 8 seats on the plane of this class.
Ooh,
And it's just, I mean, so you get 2 seats together and you convert it. Maybe you can put it in the show notes, a picture of
mhm.
suites class, but
Yeah.
it's you convert it into a full size bed and complete privacy. I
Ugh,
mean, and the service on Singapore Airlines is second to none. So they have Dom Perignon and Krug on tap base. Like we had a whole bottle of to ourselves. Like they serve you caviar. I mean, I mean, it's ridiculous.
yeah.
So we flew, and that was a very long flight. We flew from, I think it was, well, we flew from LA to Tokyo in first class because the suites class didn't operate that. And then we flew from Tokyo to Auckland, New Zealand in suites class. And it's, so I say that when you fly business class, it makes the travel experience enjoyable. And, because like economy,
Yeah.
you arrive at your destination and your back hurts and,
Oh, it's tough. Yeah.
yeah, it's
For
really
really long
painful.
flights, it is tough.
Yeah, and then you have to spend like the first day at your new destination just kind of like, just get recovering.
Yeah.
So business class it just makes that more comfortable and enjoyable. And then first class, so first, if you can book a first class seat, international first, it's to the point where it's an experience, right? It's
Mm,
like more of part of the trip, like you're having fun, like you don't want the flight to end. Like
mm.
it's just because it's so cool. They in the service they give you like an amenity kit. We have like pajamas that are like organic cotton, super high quality. Like
Jeez.
it's ridiculous. And then when you're at the airport, there is I don't know, Kevin, if you've got to experience like the lounge access where you have like
Yeah.
the business class, but suites class has their own lounge where there's like
God.
it's like a private dining, white tablecloth, Dom Perignon. Nothing, everything is free. You get like a personal concierge that like just person that walks you towards you. They like your personal, you can get whatever you want. It's ridiculous. So this is the one that we did, and it wasn't even that many points.
Wow.
So just knowing how to redeem it in a savvy way and finding that the hardest thing probably is finding the availability.
Yeah.
So that's a big one that sticks out. um, and then, I mean, we fly at least once a year, like I said, business class to Europe. So last year we took a trip to Portugal, and we flew. It was a really great flight. We flew in business class. Oh my gosh, I forgot what the airline was, but it's just a really nice experience. It's just really
Yeah.
comfortable. Another one, Japanese airlines are amazing. So ANA is another really great business class product.
Mm.
ANA, yeah, I'd highly recommend ANA and Cathay Pacific. It's based out of Hong Kong. So we flew there first class, and there's only 4 seats like this
Wow.
in their planes. And it's just, I mean, again, it's a whole nother experience. If anybody can experience it, I would just say just try it at least once, or maybe don't try it once because then you're screwed and you're gonna want to like do this every single time.
Yeah.
So
It ruins you for future travel. So.
yeah, and we do understand like if we do have kids, like also I don't know if I want to be those people, right, that bring their crying 2-year-old into
Yeah.
the business class and
Wow.
annoying all these people. So maybe we'll
I
suck it
think
up
some of
and
them don't even allow small children
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not
in
sure. Yeah,
business
but I think you're
classes.
right.
Uh,
Hmm.
and it's a different deal. Obviously, you have to have once kids get over 2 years old, they've got to have their own seat, and so you've got to buy more seats and have more points for that. But so
Exactly.
far, we've been able to navigate that just fine. It takes a little more work, a little more thought, but we also tend to ascribe to the keep it simple philosophy. We're not getting 15 different credit cards a year. We might get
Same.
we might get 3 or 4 and be strategic about it.
Exactly. And we got lucky, going back to what you said about your sister, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, is that so now we manage the hotel,
Mm,
and my wife also owns a wedding planning business. That's the
yeah.
biggest hack is if you are a small business owner, I'm
Oh,
telling you, if you're not doing this, then shame on you.
yeah.
No,
You're
no.
missing out completely.
Seriously, I mean, you're spending the money anyways, and especially
Mhm.
like my wife, she gets so it's a spend that it's not even our spend. It's like so she'll book these packages where well, she's paying for the venue, she's paying for the photographer, she's paying for the DJ, the caterer. So we have these. So now we're lucky in that we don't even have to sign up for a bunch of credit cards. We're in a great
Right.
position where we just, our spend that we normally spend anyways with our businesses allows us to accumulate a bunch of points. And we
Yeah.
also have a lot of spend on the hotel. We're able to pay we use a 1099, a cleaning company. So we pay them with credit card. We
Cool.
buy all of our supplies, toilet paper, linens, and we accumulate a lot of points. So my encouragement for, if you have a small business or if you have spend that is not your own spend, this is a great opportunity. I definitely learning about it. Don't just take
Yeah.
Kevin and my word for it. Just
Yeah.
look into it and just learn a little bit about it. I think
What
you'd find, yeah, some great benefits.
what site would you send people to start learning about it?
Ooh, good question. I like, maybe you can chime in on this as well, but I like Frequent Miler.
That's a good one.
He's
Yeah.
Frequent Miler is a good one. Like I said, 1 mile at a time. Some of this stuff can be, and it's hard. I'm trying to think for maybe a beginner level. I've been doing this for a little while, so that stuff I kind of understand a lot of there's going to be a lot of
Mhm.
lingo that's kind of
Yeah.
confusing. So those are the two that I still stay up with. Um, and then I'm trying to think of other ones. I mean, I hesitate to refer the points guy.
Yeah.
He has a big blog. It's very, I think does have a lot of good stuff for newbies, but sometimes their links, because they
Yeah.
have big affiliate links, so maybe they're
Right.
not the best offers, but there is a lot of great content on there if you're just learning the
Yeah, he
points
has a lot of
guy.
great content. He's a great resource, but you do have to watch out for who has what affiliate links
Yeah.
and what they're promoting. I think I always liked Choose FI, the Choose FI guys, choosefi.com. They have a travel rewards like course basically that will walk you
Oh,
through
cool.
things
I
step by
didn't I
step.
didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there's two or three others out there that do something similar. Um, and those are great way. And then there's, like you said, there are just so many good travel sites nowadays with
Yeah.
good
And
content.
Brad would choose FI, right?
Yeah,
Does he do that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Um, Joe, this has been really a lot of fun. If anybody wants to find you or contact you, what's the best way for them to do so?
These days, I'm trying to spend my time on our boutique hotel
Yeah,
Instagram. So, Switchback Suites is the name of that. I'm behind that. I check the DMs and I'm on there and I'm very active. So that's probably going to be the best way to reach me. So,
and then to
Switchback.
maybe go stay at Switchback Suites in Kalispell, Montana, sometime, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll be your personal guide. I'm very familiar with all the best hikes and all the local amenities and the best things to do here. So yeah, that'll be great. Please visit us.
It,
We're approaching ski season,
it's
and
a gorgeous part of the world.
yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, Switchback Suites.
All right. Well, hey, this has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad we're able to connect and hope we can stay connected. And maybe we can both have the Camino Santiago on our future list to do. So,
Sure. Don't tempt me with a good time.
all right, Joe, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Kevin.